In the last movie, I showed you how you could set up a basic template file, and we did that. We created a template file on our index.php page where we're using the include function to pull in the HTML header and the HTML footer. And these are the results that I get. So everything looks pretty good as of right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one of my sub pages. So currently my sub pages exist inside of the pages folder. I'm going to keep this same file structure and I want to create a new page and put it inside my pages folder. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off with my template.html file, and this currently exists inside the root directory, so it is not inside of my pages folder. So if I save this file save as, and I navigate into my root folder and I put this in the pages folder, and for right now we're just going to call this page about.php. This is also something worth mentioning. You might have noticed that you can run PHP on files that have the PHP extension and on files that have the .html extension. And in most cases, there really isn't a difference in the execution. Because if you're dealing with an HTML page, you can just embed the PHP tags within the HTML page and it's going to parse just fine. The general rule of thumb is that you'll probably add the extension of .php to files if you're going to be communicating with a database. So once you start working more with MySQL and you're going to want to use that, then you might want to think about adding the .php extension. But in many cases, it will work fine with HTML or PHP. Now, you're going to see a little bit later on in this lecture where it is going to be important that we choose the appropriate extension, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. The reason I named this .php in this example is because I already have a .html and I'm not quite ready to override that, so it will allow me to keep both files within my pages folder and I don't have to worry about overwriting either one. So we're going to be working on the about.php, and once again all of this beginning formatting, remember, is going to be pulled in via our include. So we're going to be doing the exact same thing as we did on index.php. We open the PHP tags and we use the include function. So I'm going to delete all of this content right here, and we'll open up our PHP tag, and then inside of the PHP tags I'm going to put in the function. Now, because this page is inside of the pages folder, I do need to use my .. to come out of the pages folder and then get into the templates folder and find header.html. And then we're going to be doing the same thing down here on the footer. So once again, I'll add my PHP tags. We'll use our include function and we'll navigate out of the pages folder, find templates, and go ahead and pull in footer.html. So all of this sounds pretty good. Everything should be working. Now I'm going to go into my index.html and I'm just going to grab the content that's inside of main, and I'll just copy this and I'm going to replace the main section right here so that I'm actually using the same content that we had on the about.html. So if we save this page right now, and I'm going to go back into my header.html and I'm going to tell it that I want to navigate instead of to the HTML file to the new PHP file, and we'll save. Here I am on my index.php file. I'll refresh this and I'm going to click about, which should be taking us to about.php. And if you actually look in the lower left hand corner, you can see that the path to the file is going to find the about.php, and if I click that, it is loading the about.php, but look what's happening. None of the formatting is showing up, so the image isn't showing up and none of our CSS is actually rendering. The issue is that, remember, when you're using include files, it's pulling these files in as they exist right like this into this particular file. So if we take a look at this really quickly, you can see that the path to the CSS is just going to be css/style.css. This is the path from the location of the root, not from inside of the pages file. So normally if we were hand coding this and we were putting something inside of the pages folder, we would need to include that .. so that we could pull out and retrieve this file. But that's not actually working for us. And the reason why is because of how PHP actually functions. So let me go back to the front end part of the website in the browser, and I'm going to open up my inspector for a second. And here inside the head section, you can see the link that we're getting. It's pulling in the file. So it is actually getting all of this header information, right? And we actually see the broken image, we see the links, but the path to the file is not correct. It's just CSS/style.css, which isn't going to function correctly from this location. So this is a little bit of a challenge sometimes when you're working with PHP, in the fact that PHP is not going to know that it needs to update all of these include files. So we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work to ensure that this is going to work. So before I actually do this, let me just show you one thing. I'm going to go back to about.php, and right here before we do the include, I'll just temporarily throw this in here, but I'm going to echo out the PHP info. And we talked about PHP info before. It's going to give us a bunch of info about PHP. And the reason that I want to show you this is that I want to show you where PHP is identifying my root folder. So you can see that the root folder that PHP identifies is inside of applications, inside of MAMP, and inside of htdocs. Now the path to where my file is actually located is a little bit different. It's actually a little bit deeper in. So let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's get rid of the echo PHP. And I'm going to set up a variable called path, and I'm going to make it equal to _server, and then in the square braces I'm going to pass on document root. This is going to give me the server's document root. So then let's just run an echo statement, and we'll just echo out the value of path. And I'm going to come back and refresh in the browser, and you can see that it's giving us that exact same path that we just looked at in the PHP info. So this is important because this gives us some information as to how PHP is identifying the path to our file. So normally, if we were on a server and we wanted to get to the root of the folder, we could go ahead and we could use a // So if I just put a / in front of my CSS and put a / in front of my images, this should look at the root folder and then try to find images and get logo.ping, and go to the root folder and try to find a folder called CSS and then get style.css. But if I save here and we refresh, again, if we look at how the page is actually being rendered, you can see that it is printing that, but it's looking for, and you can tell as I hover over the link href link that it says http://localhost:8888 /CSS/style.css. So again, it is looking for the CSS folder inside of what the application is seeing as the root directory, which is currently htdocs. Now, because I'm working in my local environment inside of MAMP, I actually have quite a few projects set up inside of my htdocs folder. So if I open up my folder structure, here's my MAMP folder, here's htdocs, and inside of htdocs I have a PHP folder. I don't just have the contents of my Nessie folder right inside of the htdocs. And if I actually copied all of these files and place them inside of the htdocs, and then if we go back to the browser for a second, you can now see that here's my PHP file, and if I click the about link, it actually works fine. We can see that that was that code that I put in there temporarily. So everything works if it's in the root, but my file is currently not inside of just the root, and I'm going to just get rid of these because I don't actually want them there. Since I use MAMP to work on a lot of various applications that are needing to have some sort of dynamic server, I like to put subdirectories inside of htdocs. So in this case, I have PHP, and then I have a bunch of subdirectories here, and then inside the 09, which is the one I'm working from, I have Nessie, and then I have the Nessie files. So when I load that page, you can see that none of those external files are being pulled in. So to solve this issue, what I usually do is I will usually create a variable that's going to store the actual path to the file. And this is something that you might not have to do on every project. Like if I was hosting this website up on a server, then I might not have all those subdirectories. My site-related files, everything that's inside of our Nessie folder, would probably just reside on the root folder on the server. And in that case, I'm not going to have this issue. But if you happen to be working on a project where you do have elements that are inside of subfolders and maybe it's not going to be able to find the files correctly, then you might run into a little bit more of an issue. So to resolve this, what I'm going to do in our project here is that I'm going to create a variable that will store the root path. And in this case, we'll kind of drill into PHP 09 and Nessie. And then I'll be able to augment the links that I need to based on that. We're going to get rid of this echo information right here. I'll just comment this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to actually change anything on the about page. I'm going to go into my header.html page. And what I need to do here is I need to create a variable that we can then use in our project. So what we're going to do to resolve this is I'm going to create a variable, and I'll just create this in the head section. I need to open up my PHP tag and set a closing PHP tag. And then inside the PHP tag, I'm going to create a variable, and we'll just call it root path. And I'm going to make it equal to, and I'm going to put the rest of the path that I would need to complete what PHP is actually seeing as my root directory. So from htdocs, I need to go into the PHP folder, into the 09 folder, into the Nessie folder, and then I'll have my / and I'll have whatever other files that I need to link to or create. So now that we have this, we can use this in the code. So I'll come down here to my image tag, and inside of the source tag, right after the quote, I'm just going to open up a PHP tag, and we're going to use our echo statement. And then I'm going to say that I want to echo out the variable of root path, and I'll use a semicolon there, and then I'm just going to close my PHP tag, and then immediately following it, we're going to have the rest of the path to the image. So if we save this right now and we refresh, you can see that now the image is loading. It actually is being able to navigate, because if we check the rendered code, the compiled code, you can see my image is going, it's adding on /PHP /09 /Nessie, and it looks like I have 2 / there. Yeah, actually, sorry, I don't need this right here, the images, because we made that part of what's happening in our root path. So I'll just get rid of that. It did render okay, but it's not necessary. And then I'll have the path to the image. So now the image is getting pulled in, and so that looks great. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for the rest of the links. Currently, if I hover over the home button, if you look again down to the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see that the path is going to be inside of the pages folder, and then it's looking for something called index.html. So we need to go out from this interior page. And if I change that in my header.html, the path to index, it's going to break the link to the index file on my other pages. And the same thing would happen with these internal pages. So we'll just use this same little trick here. Inside of the opening quotes on the link, I'm going to open up a PHP tag. So I'm making inline PHP. We'll use our echo statement here, and we're going to echo out the root path variable that we created, and then I'll use my semicolon and I'll close out the PHP, and then it's just going to say index.html. So if we save this and we refresh the page and I hover over the index page, you can see, if you look in the lower left hand corner, the link is correct, and if I click on this, it's going to take me to my index.html. Now, ultimately, we'll probably be going to our index.php, so that's a global change. I'll just change that here in the code. And I'm going to just use this echo statement on all of the link items. So I'll put that in front of any link items that I have. So it's going to echo out that path that we specified up here and then pull in the pages. So the only downside of this is that we would need to make sure, if we're using this technique, that if we were to move this onto another location, this particular website, I would need to update all of those paths so that they were then pointing to the appropriate directory. So if I was going to put this on a server, I might not even need this, or if I was going to move it to another machine, then perhaps the path would not be the same. But it still is only one file that I would have to update. Like if I had built an entire website, I wouldn't need to go into multiple pages. I could just change this path issue right here. And if we save now all of our links work. You can see how my about.php page looks great. I can navigate back to the index.home page and everything's rendering fine here. And if I go to the about.php page, it's going to take me back to that page. So this looks just how I want it to look. So just know that if you're going to be developing a site locally and not connecting to a real server, or if you're using subdirectories on your real server or whatnot, you could have this problem when you're dealing with PHP. But if you create a variable and know what the actual path is, then this is a way that you can resolve it. So if you're not sure what the path is, then I would do something like what we did right here, where we just asked what the server's document root was and echo that out, or just echo out PHP info so you can collect that information, and then based on that you can make a determination and update your file as needed. You will need to put the appropriate path structure from this existing page to pull in any template files, but we want to make sure that our template, our include files, are going to render out the information. So now that I have this all situated, I can create the rest of the content. And just to show you, I'm going to go into my gallery page right here. Remember that all of this information is going to be from our include, as well as this information right here. So instead of actually creating another file, I'm just going to save out my gallery.html. So I will select this whole header section right here. I'm going to open up my PHP tag, and I like to immediately create the closing PHP tag, and then we'll just use the include function, and inside of our parentheses we're going to put the path to the template file. So from the gallery.html, which is inside my pages folder, I need to go .. I need to go into templates, and I need to pull in the header.html file, and then I'll just copy this, and I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'll replace this, and we'll pull in the footer.html. And if we save this, the gallery pages should be going to gallery.html. So if I click on this, you're going to see that it's going to the gallery page, but once again, I'm missing all of my formatting. So the reason that we don't have our formatting is because this page is currently an HTML page. And I know that I just finished telling you that a lot of times it doesn't matter if it's PHP or HTML. But in this case, because in our header.html, we're using this root path, we're using this variable right here, and then we're echoing these things out. So even though the header.html is an HTML page, when we're using these calls to echo out this information using the variable, it's not going to work on our HTML file. So if I simply just rename this file and give it an extension of PHP, and we save that, and let's go back to our header.html, and instead of linking out to the gallery.html, we're going to link out to gallery.php. If we save that and we come and we go back, so here I am on the about page once again, if I click the gallery link, which is now going to a PHP file, it's going to point to the gallery.php, and everything's going to work like it was originally intended. And obviously our links are going to work, so I could navigate back to my home page, to my about page, to my gallery page. We're going to deal with the contact page a little bit later on because I want to show you something about building a form in a slightly different way. So we'll be building that page out from scratch, which is why we don't have that. And then the final thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace the content that's on my homepage. Right now it's using this placeholder text right here. So let's go back to our original index.html. And here I'm going to copy the main content. We're going to go into index.php and we're just going to replace everything inside of main with this content. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to actually go into the about page. And now that I'm looking at this page, I just realized that I copied the HTML from the index page instead of from the about page. So let's actually go back into the about.html page, and I'm just going to select all of the main content. I have quite a bit more text here and a different header one. And I'll go into the about.php and we'll just replace all of this content with the content that should be there. And let's save now. And if we come back out to the browser, here's my home page. Here's our about page with the correct content. And here's our gallery page. So everything's looking really great, and the template include files are pulling in the information that they should. And as you can see, using this method is really convenient because it will allow us to just have one file that takes care of everything that should be in the head section, or one file that should take care of everything in the footer section. And as a final step here, I'm just going to delete like the HTML file. I don't need that anymore, so we'll just delete that out. And we don't need our HTML index page either, so I'll delete that as well. Hopefully you can see how templates can really streamline the process of building websites, especially where you have sections that are going to be the same on multiple pages. Templates are a great way that you can kind of manage this. It's almost like you're building your own little mini content management system with PHP. And remember that one of the most popular content management systems, WordPress, is based on PHP. So some of the things that we're doing here are things that are similar to how WordPress allows you to work on websites and how they pull in the various files.